Let me introduce you to Marat Khusnutdinov. Marat Khusnutdinov is a center who plays for SKA St. Petersburg's top NHL team, SKA-1946. And in my opinion, he might be the most underrated player eligible for the 2020 NHL Draft. He started the season with very little power play time for a very, very good team in the MHL. There's a lot of players on that team that are 19, 20, even 21 years old, and they very easily could be playing on any other team top line in the MHL, let alone in the KHL or the VHL. They're absolutely loaded with talent, and Khusnutdinov was flying under the radar for quite a while because of how much talent was in front of him. But as the year progressed, he got more and more ice time, ending the season as a top 6 forward, and was tremendously productive down the final stretch of the season leading into the playoffs. So if you've never watched a Scouching Report before, the way we break down a player is we look at 5 different categories: think, move, get, pass, and shoot. Within each one of those categories, we give a player a number and a letter grade, with a number from 1 to 4 indicates the overall tier of talent that I saw across the 7 games I tracked, and the letter indicates the overall consistency within that tier that I saw across those 7 games. So to get things started, we look at the think category. I don't really know how to sugarcoat this, but Marat Khusnutdinov can just play the game. After watching him, it is absolutely no wonder why he was an assistant captain on such a powerhouse team and why he's captained Russian international teams in the past. He is a bit of a raw player, but the projectability of his natural tendencies on the ice is astoundingly positive. He jumps into offensive forechecks extremely aggressively. He's very, very quick on his feet, but he doesn't really sacrifice defensive positioning. He jumps in and makes a quick attack to apply pressure on defensive players, but he will immediately cut straight back to the blue line more often than not to cut off any breakouts that start from there. He's constantly buzzing around the ice in a seemingly uncontrolled way. He covers a tremendous amount of ice in a given period of time. He tails forecheckers extremely relentlessly. He always seems to be everywhere on the ice, almost to a fault. If he can refine things a little bit in that regard to play a little bit more of a structured game, I think there could be a tremendous hockey player here one day. He's completely unselfish with the puck, and if there's ever a situation to put the puck on a teammate's stick to move the puck up the ice, Khusnutdinov notices it and does it. I really don't know what else to say. I have to give him a 1B in this category because he's not perfect. There are things that I think need to be ironed out. There were some situations where against higher level teams in the MHL, he seemed to take a step back, but he was an absolute force in the defensive zone, the neutral zone, and the offensive zone in all 7 games that I tracked. Next up, we look at the move category, and this is another area where Marat Khusnutdinov shows spectacularly well most of the time. He's extremely agile on his edges. He can maneuver around the ice very, very quickly. I wouldn't say he's the quickest straight line skater that I've ever seen by any means, but he's able to navigate around the ice and cover a lot of ice really, really effectively throughout the entirety of his shift. He can fight off defenders, he battles hard, he can be patient with and without the puck, waiting for something to present itself in front of him, and he maintains possession of the puck extremely well in my viewings. There are also flashes of absolutely tremendous skill in the offensive zone, and as he gets older and a little bit more confident with a bit more strength on his feet, I think there's a lot to like with his projectability in that regard as well, and that might increase his production moving forward, which was a bit lackluster for parts of this season. Let me just throw this out there as well. When it came to offensive transitions, controlling the puck, he maintained control of the puck 77% of the time. And there are only 2 players that I've tracked, both of whom I haven't gotten to 7 games yet, who are above that number. One is Brett Berard of the US Under-18 team, and Marco Rossi, a player that probably should be going in the top 5 this year. I don't really think he's the best pure straight line skater in the draft, but he does weave around the neutral zone really effectively, looking for seams, and if he doesn't find one, he knows where to find teammates to continue that possession offensively. He just does not lose control of the puck, especially moving in an offensive direction. It just doesn't happen. So in the move category, Marat Khusnutdinov gets a 1C. I know 1C might be similar to other players that I haven't gleaned about as much, but that really stems from a lack of strength that I've seen with him. 2 of the games that I tracked, he played Lokomotiv Yaroslavl's junior team, which is another powerhouse team in that league. And in one of those games, he was really heavily shut down by bigger opponents, by stronger opponents and more experienced opponents. But keep in mind that Khusnutdinov is a player that is about 2 months away from being eligible for next year's draft. And he is a bit undersized, so it's a bit forgivable that he could be rubbed out along the boards a little bit too easily. But all things being considered, as he is right now, there's tremendous value in his ability to move around the ice. Next up is the get category, and to put it simply, Marat Khusnutdinov is a menace. The MHL does suffer from being a bit more laid back, and I believe the way I put it was, don't worry, everything will work out for the best hockey, which isn't ideal to evaluate young talent, but Marat Khusnutdinov in the get category is very, very simple. He comes at you, he gets control of the puck, he finds a teammate to give it to, or he finds a way to get it out of the zone himself, and you probably won't be getting it back from him. He's a great stick checker, and whether it's in transition or chasing guys around in his defensive zone, he finds creative ways to put an absolute stop to opposing teams' offenses. He does need to get stronger on his feet to engage in board battles a little bit better, but I still think that his bread and butter is going to be breaking play up with his stick and using his mobility to chase guys around the ice. And while he can be a bit of what I would call an aggressive floater, he still controlled 61% of the high and medium danger shot attempts while he was on the ice, and 65% of just the high danger chances. So at the end of the day, with his perceived shortcomings with regards to his size and maybe a lack of physicality, he's still driving excellent results. So in the get category, I'm giving him a 1B again. He's an absolute menace to deal with if you're an opposing team. Now, it remains to be seen how projectable it will be. He might just be the one guy in the MHL who plays like that, but I did find it really impressive how good he was at chasing guys around, snuffing out offenses, using his stick to turn play around, being creative with either moving pucks on his own, out of his own zone, or using his teammates to do the same thing. He really is just a joy to watch play hockey. Next up is the pass category, and when you look at his raw passing statistics, it might not really jump off the page. 75% pass completion rate is good, 10% dangerous passing percentage is average. But the important thing to note is that when it came to just attempting passes, Khusnutdinov was the only player on my list that I've tracked so far this year, which spans 70 players, over 100 pass attempts per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. That's forwards and defensemen. All he does is move pucks around the ice, and 75% of the time he's doing it with control of the puck. In terms of completed passes per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, he's second on my list behind Helge Grans with 78. And 10.8 dangerous passes per 60 minutes is average, I would say, but his focus is a lot more about turning pucks around in the defensive zone, moving pucks up the ice with control, and snuffing out offenses in the neutral zone. In the offensive zone, there's a ton of projectability. He did show really nice flashes of being a great playmaker in the offensive end, but his bread and butter is a transition center that almost quarterbacks an entire line on his own. So in the pass category, I'm giving Khusnutdinov a 2A. Right now, it's hard to envision him as a really lethal playmaker, but I do see the potential of that being possible. But he still does move pucks extremely effectively. He spots teammates and can quickly get them the puck, even when he's facing a lot of pressure. He just makes life way easier for the guys that he's playing with on the ice. And he's one of a rare breed of players that I've noticed will set up in what used to be Wayne Gretzky's office. He can set up behind the net, survey play, and take a look around, and it's just kind of a nice, refreshing look on the game that you don't see too much anymore. Again, I'm not sure how projectable that is, but it does show that he's willing to be patient and survey the ice and look for dangerous opportunities that way, and there were a few times where it very nearly paid off for him. Next up is the shoot category, and this is where Khusnutdinov might lose me a little bit. I really don't see him being an absolutely lethal goal scorer at the next level. His shot is fine, but he's not really pushing into dangerous areas a whole lot, which is relatively common for the league in which he plays. But he does have plenty of quickness and agility and those flashes of really incredible skill with his hands, so he can cut into dangerous areas, and I would expect that as he gets even more resilient with the puck, even stronger on his feet, he should be able to push a little bit deeper into the offensive zone, but most of his points at the next level, I believe, will come from his passing. So in the shoot category, I'm giving Khusnutdinov a 2C. Again, it wasn't really apparent that he was really that much of a shooting threat, at least at 5-on-5. On the power play, when he did play there, he certainly did have his fair share of shot attempts, but his bread and butter is more moving pucks up the ice with control, playing in transition, snuffing out offense, and in terms of generating offense and production, being a playmaker in the offensive zone has taken him a long way. So the way we wrap up these reports is we look at what the best part of a player's game is, the good part of a player's game, and the not so good part of a player's game. The best part of Marat Khusnutdinov really is just how much of a joy he is to watch as someone who really studies the game of hockey. He plays hard, he creates turnovers, he's relentless with and without the puck. He turns play around quickly. He uses his teammates very, very effectively and maintains possession tremendously well. And in all of the metrics that I track that try to identify players that push play positively in general, even if there isn't a tremendous amount of point production at the end of the day, Marat Khusnutdinov is an absolute standout. And he's been elevated to what I would call meme status. The guy can just play hockey. The good part of his game is that there were flashes of overall offensive skill more and more as the season went on. His ability to be dangerous with his passing might not have been as apparent as maybe some other players in this year's draft as often, but he did show flashes of being capable of being a very, very talented playmaker in the offensive end. Even on smaller ice, like at the World Junior A Championship this year, I thought he looked very, very good in that tournament considering his relative lack of point production. So while putting up points on the scoreboard has been a bit of a struggle for him, at least in the first half of this season, with a little bit more strength and a little bit more confidence and a little bit more experience, I certainly believe that over time that should come a step, especially if he decides to make the jump over to play for the Erie Otters, who drafted him in the import draft last year for the Canadian Hockey League. Before Christmas 2019, he had 15 points in 25 games. Since Christmas, he has 23 points in 19 games, and he still wasn't getting a tremendous amount of power play time. He was getting more than he was, but at even strength, he's one of the better players for his age in the entire NHL. The not so good part really is only his strength. He did get knocked around a little bit too much. He did get suppressed against bigger, older, and more experienced opponents like Loko Yaroslavl, but if he wasn't playing that specific team, he still looked pretty fantastic in all areas of the game and all areas of the ice. And just to identify how not so good he was against Loko Yaroslavl, in those two games, he was under a 40% shot attempt percentage player. That on the surface is not great, but when you go back and look at his transition data from those games, in both of those games, he had controlled offensive zone transitions 67% and 87% of the time. So he still was doing a lot of those little things really, really well. Just when it came to generating offense and suppressing defense, there might have been a little bit left to be desired. But I do think that with more strength and experience, that should come a few steps. So overall, I'm giving Marat Khusnutdinov a 1D. Considering how positive I've been up to this point, it might surprise you that I'm giving him a 1D, but he plays in a league that is hard to read, and I still do believe that while his ceiling is potentially limitless, I do also believe that there's a strong chance that the strength might never show up and he might have trouble being a real difference maker offensively. I do think that if that does happen, he will be an exceptional defensive center at the next level at the very least. But there's a lot to like about the rest of his game and the potential that he has, and if things break right, he could be a real steal in this year's draft, especially if he's available in the second round. The guy is basically the hockey equivalent of a great football midfielder. Responsible defensively, excellent at moving the ball up the field, getting those really solid touches that just chip in and make the game easier for their teammates. He absolutely commands the ice with the puck on his stick most of the time. It is something that you really should see, and that team's games are all on YouTube available for free. So a lot of the time when Khusnutdinov was on the ice, good things were happening. So he may be a long-term project. He may have potentially limited offensive upside at the end of the day, but his ability to push even strength play was amongst the best of all NHL 2020 eligibles. And considering how loaded his team was that he played on, he drove play extremely well relative to a very talented team. So while he might be a bit undersized, you look at his profile and you look at the data that I've tracked on him, and it's really hard not to see a potential steal in Marat Khusnutdinov. If he hits his ceiling, his potential, in my opinion, is limitless. There isn't really that much that you need to coach into him to change how he plays to be as effective as he is at the next level. It really just comes down to how strong he can be on his feet, and if he can build on his offensive tools to actually put more points on the board at the end of the day. Marat Khusnutdinov is a really, really good example of a hockey player that I am always looking for. Plays hard every time he steps on the ice, constantly tailing opponents when he doesn't have the puck. He just does not take no for an answer. If he can take the puck himself up the ice, go for it. But if he can't, use your teammates. Find a teammate and get the puck to him. And he does that. Gain those transitions offensively and suppress those transitions defensively. All of those things make offense a lot easier. You'll spend more time in the offensive zone and you'll spend more time trying to get pucks to the front of the net where goals are scored. Marat Khusnutdinov does all of those things. And when it comes to actually putting the puck in the net, I'm of the belief that if you continue to do those things on a shift-to-shift basis, The points will follow, and if the last half of his season is to be believed, I certainly see a very, very bright future for Mr. Khusnutdinov. So that's it for this Scouching Report. I hope you enjoyed. I certainly enjoyed watching this player, and I hope you do too. If you liked the video, you can click all the buttons you see below me so that you never miss another one. If you really liked the video, you could subscribe on Patreon, where you get access to data sheets for drafted and undrafted prospects, visualization tools that are patron only, early access to videos, as well as merchandise discounts at the Scouchwear shop, where 50% of all profits go to the Women's Sports Foundation. So that's all, and thanks for watching. Khusnutdinov. Marat Khusnutdinov.